Hi, today we're going to be learning about the nets of pyramids. First, you need to know what pyramids are in geometry. A pyramid is a 3D object that has one base, which must be a polygon. So here is an example of a pyramid. If we look at the X-ray view of this, you'll see that we have a polygon as the base of this pyramid. In this case, it is a square. The lateral faces, which are the faces that go around the pyramid, are all triangles, and they come together at a common vertex, which we call the apex. And it is the vertex that is opposite the base. Okay, so that is what a pyramid is. It is a 3D object that has a single base. It has one base, which must be a polygon. And the lateral faces are triangles that come together at the apex. Here are a few examples of different pyramids. We've got the triangular pyramid. We've got a square pyramid that has the square as the base over here. There's a pentagonal pyramid that has the pentagon as a base over here. And then we have the hexagonal pyramid, which has a hexagon as the base. Pyramids are named according to the shape of the base. So whatever the shape of the base is, that is what will give the name for the pyramid. So if the base is a hexagon, then it's a hexagonal pyramid. If the base is a triangle, then it's a triangular pyramid. If the base is a rectangle, it will be a rectangular pyramid. If the base is an octagon, it will be an octagonal pyramid, and so on. Now we're going to go on to an activity where we are going to use the nets of pyramids to actually construct them and build them and see what they look like. Okay, so here's the first one we're going to do. Use the nets provided that match the ones shown below to build the 3D objects and then write down the name of each 3D shape. So if you have got the worksheets that go with this lesson, you can use the net that is provided. It should look like this. If you don't have the worksheet, then you can simply quickly take a screenshot and print that out to work with so that you can do this activity. So what you're going to do is you're going to cut out this net on all the solid lines like that, and then you're going to fold on all the dotted lines and use glue to stick the tabs down to actually build your pyramid. Okay, so once you have done that, I want you then to go back and I want you to write down the name of the pyramid that you end up with. So you can quickly pause the video, you can go and do that, and then you can come back. Okay, so now let's have a look at what your pyramid should look like. Okay, so you should have ended up with a pyramid that looks something like this. So you can see that all of the faces are triangles in this pyramid, and if you put it down, any one of the faces as the base is actually exactly the same. In this particular example of a triangular pyramid, all of the faces are identical to each other. Now that's not always going to be the case, depending on the height of the pyramid, also depending on the type of triangle that the base of the pyramid is. You could end up with different kinds of triangles on the different faces. But in this example, every single triangle in this particular pyramid is exactly the same as each other. And these are actually what we call equilateral triangles in this particular example of a triangular pyramid. So what you would have over here for your name is probably triangular pyramid, but it is not the only name that you could have given for this particular pyramid. Because all of the faces are equilateral triangles, there is another special name for this particular triangular pyramid. It is also called a tetrahedron. It is one of the Platonic solids. Now, most triangular pyramids are not tetrahedrons. Only triangular pyramids that have equilateral triangles that are all exactly the same as each other for the four faces will be tetrahedrons. Any other triangular pyramid that does not have identical equilateral triangles for the faces will not be a tetrahedron. It will just be a triangular pyramid. But this particular one is a tetrahedron because it has equilateral triangles for the faces. So that is our first example. Okay, now let's go on to the next one that you're going to build. For this one, you're going to build a 3D object with the net that matches this one. It should look something like this. If you haven't got it, again, you can quickly take a screenshot and you can print that out for yourself. And then you can do this activity. Just like in the last one, you're going to cut out on the solid lines, fold on the dotted lines, and then use glue to stick down the tabs to create your 3D object. And once you've done it, I want you to then write down the name of whatever 3D object you end up with. Okay, so you can pause the video and you can go and do that quickly. Okay, so let's have a look and see what you should have ended up with. So you should have ended up with something that looks like this, okay? Something like this. So you can see at the bottom over here, I've got a rectangle, and then I have got my triangles, which are the lateral sides or the lateral faces, which are coming together at the apex over here, which is opposite the base over there. Okay, now this one is different to the last one because the last one, all the faces were identical, so any one of them could have been the base. But in this example, there is only one face that can be the base, and that is the rectangle over here. These are all the lateral faces, and they come together at the apex over there. So that's basically what your pyramid should look like for this example. So the name of this pyramid is a rectangular pyramid, okay, because the base is a rectangle. Now I want you to take note that in this particular example, the triangles for the lateral faces are not identical to each other. If you have a regular polygon as your base, and if the apex is directly over the center of the polygon, then your triangles will be identical to each other. But if you have an irregular polygon, that means that if the sides are not all the same length, so like in this one over here, in our rectangle, the sides are not all the same length. That means that this is not a regular polygon. A square would be a regular polygon, a rectangle is not. So if we've got an irregular polygon, or if the apex is not over the center of the base, then your triangles might be different shapes to each other. There might be different kinds of triangles. Okay, so just be aware of that. When you are working with a regular polygon and the apex is directly over the center of the base, then the triangles should all be the same as each other. But if you have an irregular polygon, or if the apex is not over the center of the base, then your triangles will be different. Okay, so that is what you should have got for that one. That is a rectangular pyramid. Now we're going to practice sketching the nets for pyramids. So in this one over here, you've got this pyramid, and you can see that this is a square over there as the base. I want you to make a rough sketch of the net for this pyramid. When you're doing it, you don't need to measure everything to the millimeter. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I do want you to try and make it so that it looks right. Okay, so you need to make sure that if things are supposed to be the same length, that they do look like they are the same length, and so on. Okay, so I'm going to give you 1 minute to work on this net. Okay, so let's have a look at what your net should look like. So the first thing you had to do was you had to have a square in your net. Okay, now your net doesn't necessarily have to look exactly the same as mine. You don't have to have the base in the middle of the net, but it is the easiest way to do it. Okay, so if you have the base in the middle of the net, then you're just going to have all the triangles coming off each of the sides of the base. So in this case, because the square has got 4 sides and the apex looks like it's above the center of the base, the triangles should be the same as each other, okay, because this is a regular polygon over here. A square is a regular polygon, so the triangles should be the same as each other, and they are pointing in the 4 different directions, all coming off the sides of the square. So that's what you should have for that one, something along those lines. Just again, remember, it doesn't necessarily have to look exactly the same as the one that I've got. If you have your triangles all going next to each other like this with the square or something like that, so long as you make sure that you don't have more faces than you need or fewer faces than you need to make sure that you have all the correct faces that you need to have. And also you need to make sure that none of the faces would end up overlapping each other if you were to build the pyramid using the net that you have drawn. Okay, now let's go on to the next one. Just like in the previous one, you are going to draw a rough sketch of the net for this pyramid. Just so you know, the base of this pyramid is a hexagon. Okay, so I'm going to give you 1 minute to work on this example as well. Okay, so let's have a look at what your net should look like. So first of all, your net should have a hexagon which has 6 sides, and you should have 6 triangles as well. Now, just like in the previous one, the apex looks like it is above the center of the hexagon, so the triangles should be the same as each other. Okay, so over here I've got my hexagon in the middle, and I've got the 6 triangles coming off the sides of the hexagon. But once again, yours doesn't have to look identical to this. You could have your triangles placed slightly differently depending on how you chose to do it, but you need to make sure that you have got 6 triangles and 1 hexagon, and that the triangles are the same shape as each other. And you need to make sure that if you were to use your net to try and build the pyramid again, none of the faces would end up overlapping each other. Okay, so that is making sketches of the nets of pyramids. So now we're going to go on to an activity where I'm going to give you nets for pyramids, and you need to identify which of the nets are correct, which nets will actually work to build the pyramid that you have been given. So in this example over here, you've been given 8 different nets. You need to identify which of these nets will actually work for this pyramid. Okay, so you need to look at these nets very carefully because not all of them are correct. You need to make sure that they have got the correct number of each of the different faces. You need to make sure that they are the correct shapes. You need to make sure that none of the faces will overlap, and so on. Okay, now if you have the worksheets that go with this lesson, you can just circle the correct nets. But if you don't, you can use these numbers and you can write down the numbers of all the nets that are correct. Okay, so I'm going to give you 1 minute to work on this. Okay, so let's go through that quickly. So first of all, I'm just going to show you which ones are correct, and then I'll talk you through why the other ones are not correct. So the first one over here, this one is correct. Then the next one over here is also correct. The next one that's correct is number 4. And then the last one that's correct is number 8. Okay, so now let's quickly talk about why the other ones are not correct. So this one over here isn't correct because these 2 faces, if you were to build this, these 2 faces would end up overlapping each other. This one isn't correct because if you were to try and build it, these 2 triangles over here are actually facing the wrong way around. They should be more like this one over here. If you look at this one and that one, they are very similar to each other. But for this one, the longest side of the triangle, which should be along the side of the square over here, is not going to end up along the side of the square. This side is going to end up along the side of the square and is not the right length. Okay, so this one is not correct. Then this one is also not correct because these two faces would end up overlapping each other. And this one is not correct because these two faces would end up overlapping each other. Okay, so that's what you should have got for question A. Now we're going to go on to the next one where you're going to do the exact same thing. You've got a pyramid over here and you've got a number of different nets that you need to identify which of these nets are correct and which ones are not. You're going to circle the correct nets. If you don't have the worksheets that go with it, you can use the numbers over here and you can write down the numbers of the nets that are correct. And I'm going to give you 1 minute for this one as well. Okay, so let's go through that one. So once again, I'm going to show you the ones that are correct, and then I'll talk you through the ones that are not. So the first one over here, number 1, is correct. Then the next one that is correct is actually number 5. So none of those are correct over there. Number 5 is correct. Number 6 is also correct. Number 7 is also correct. And then number 8 is not. So the correct ones in this one are 1, 5, 6, and 7. So I need to quickly talk you through why the other ones are not correct. So in number 2, this face and this one over here, these two triangles, would end up overlapping if you were to try and build this. In number 3, we have even more overlapping happening. This one and that one and that one. All 3 of these triangles would end up overlapping. Then in number 4, these two triangles would overlap with each other, and these two triangles would also overlap with each other. So that's also not correct. And then number 8, these two over here would overlap, and these two would overlap. So that's also not correct. So that's why those ones are not correct and these ones are correct. And that is how we work with the nets of pyramids. Now that we've learned the concepts in this lesson, it's important to practice, practice, practice. If you haven't already got the worksheet that goes with this video, you can find it by clicking on the link in the description below. The worksheet comes with an extra exercise full of questions for you to work on to master the concepts covered in this lesson. If you found this video helpful, please hit the like button so that others can benefit from it too. Also, be sure to subscribe so that you can easily find my other lessons, and hit the bell so that you will get notified about lessons as I upload them.